Greetings, I'm Squared here, and we are going to talk about Learning Target 4, which is about analyzing graphs and deciding what the slope actually means in context of the problem and what the intercepts mean in context of the problem. So we're going to just look at a few graphs. When you look at a graph, you want to definitely notice there's a title to it. So there's no title to this one, but see a little four-wheeler up here. We want to notice what the x and y-axis are labeled because that will help us with our context. So this says gallons of gas in the tank, and this says miles traveled. So we all know that as you go down the road, going farther and farther, you're using gas. So that's why we have a negative slope, because the gas in the tank will be going down the farther we travel. So we want to know what the slope means in the context of the problem and what the y-intercept and the x-intercept would mean in the context of the problem. So when we look at the y-axis, it says 4. And so we don't know what 4 means unless we look right here. It says gallons in the tank. So when we haven't even gone anywhere, when we're at 0 miles, there are 4 gallons in the tank. If we want to find our slope, we want to go down to, that's a -2, over 4. But remember, we've got to know what it's counting by, because see, on the y-axis we're counting by once, so I actually went down 2. But we didn't really, we went over 4 spaces, but how much did we really go over? We went over 40. Okay, so what does the slope mean, down 2 over 40? That would be -1 over 20. So we know the slope, but what does it actually mean? So the 1 represents gallons in the tank, so we're losing 1 gallon of gas for every 20 miles that we travel. That's what the slope means. We're using 1 gallon of gas for every 20 miles on the road. Okay, so we're getting 20 miles to the gallon. You'll hear people talk like that. Oh, what's your miles per gallon? 20 miles to the gallon. Okay, let's try another one. Oh, I forgot to tell you over here, because there's no x-intercept. But what would happen when the x-intercept was 0? Well, when the y-axis says 0, I'm sorry, when the y-intercept is, when the x-intercept over here is not 0, but when it gets down to the x-axis. We don't know when that is. We could figure it out, right? Because every 1 gallon, it's 20 miles, so we'd have to go another 20 miles. So at 80 miles, how much gas would we have in the tank? 0. Okay, just wanted to point that out, what that x-intercept is going to mean. It means we have 0 gallons. Our y is 0. Okay, so this is a pool. So hopefully they get out of the pool before the water is drained. But this is telling us that the water is being drained from the pool, probably for the winter, right? So we're going to have to figure out what the slope is. Notice we don't have a graph, so we can't do what we did in the previous problem. We're going to have to find our difference in y and our difference of x. So y minus y, x minus x. So I can see here that x minus x is -2, and the y minus y, let's see, I'm sorry, that's +2. Time is going up, not down. My apologies. So get out your calculator and you say 51, can't see that, can you? I'm going to say 51.2 minus 46.4. I think that's what it said, 46.4. And my calculator says that it's 4.8. So I'm going to say, 4.8. The water went down 4.8. That's our change in y over our change in x. This went down, so it's negative. So if we divide there, we can find our slope as -2.4. And I always like to see if it's the same. So I would also just grab a couple other points. Here's a 2, and then I'm saying is 41.6 minus 36.8. Is that 4.8? Yeah, it's 4.8. Okay, so I'm good because it's going down, it's going up by 2. So it took 10 hours to go from 51.2 gallons to 32 gallons. So what does -2.4 mean in terms of the context of this problem? What it means is that for every hour, because our time was in hours, we lose 2.4 gallons. That's what it means in the context of the problem. So it's draining at 2.4 4 gallons every hour. Seems kind of slow. It's going to take a long time for that to go. Maybe it's just because the kids are splashing around. I don't know. But anyway, it'll take a long time to get that out. Well, how long would it take? Well, we could write our equation, right? Y equals negative 2.4x plus 0. 0 would be what it was 2 hours ahead of that. So you could add 4.8 to the 51.2. So 51.2 plus 4.8 is what it would have been before. So that would have been 56 gallons. And you can figure out, you want to know when y is 0. You could figure that out by subtracting 56 from both sides and then dividing by negative 2.4. And you would find your answer, how long it's going to take to drain that whole pool if it stays at that same rate. Okay, road trip time. So there's 2 families and they're traveling. It says the graph shows the number of miles that the Pennington and the Williams families have traveled in a given number of hours. So we've got time in hours, we've got distance in miles. It's always important to know what the x and y axis really mean. 0, 0. What do our intercepts mean? Well, when time is 0, distance is 0. So it says at 0 time, neither one of them had traveled very far at all. And then you see the slope is changing. This is counting by 20s, and this is counting by halves. So this is 1 hour. So at 1 hour, right, we see that they're a little ways apart, and then at 2 hours, here they are. Well, what does the slope mean? Well, the slope is telling you miles per hour. That's what it's telling you. So if we found the slope of 1, we could tell they're miles per hour. But we can also tell that the Williams are going slower than the Penningtons because the Penningtons are covering more distance per hour. All right, a few more. Here is a picture of some candles. You know that if you burn a candle, it gets shorter. So that's why our slope is going down. It's negative. So this says the length in inches of the candle, and this says the time in minutes. So every 20 minutes, it's counting by tens, but we see the 20, 40, 60. We see this point right here. What does this point mean in the context of the problem? Well, it means that after 30 minutes, if I go down, right, after 30 minutes, the candle is at 7 inches. Well, how tall was the candle when it started? That would be our y-intercept. It was 10 inches at 0 time. So at a time of 0, it's 10 inches long. How long will the candle burn before it disintegrates into a blob of nothing? It says 100 minutes. So that's an hour and 40 minutes. Here's our hour, 60, right? So that is what that one means. 40 minutes past 60, 60 minutes is an hour. Okay, here's one that's entitled altitude change. So this one has a title, which is nice. Altitude. So, and then it says temperature in Fahrenheit and altitude, thousands of feet. So I don't know if you've noticed, but when you go up in altitude, it often gets much, much colder. That happened to me on Mount Washington one time. It was 90 degrees at the base, and by the time I got to the top, I needed a jacket. So this is showing that we were even going negative, below sea level, right? So we're counting by tens. Now I'm below, the temperature goes down below 0. Thousands of feet, so that's important to notice that this is 2,000 feet, 4,000 feet, 6,000 feet, etc. So at 22,000 feet, that's really high, we are at a negative 20 degrees, but at an altitude of 0, so when we're just at sea level, we're at 60 degrees. So it makes a big difference. So what does this point mean in the context? It means that at 33,000 feet, almost 34,000 feet, at 7,000 feet in altitude, we're at 33.8 degrees. Whoa, that was crazy. Okay, at 0, we're at 59. And then we can see, what does this intercept mean right here? It means that when we're, a little more than 16,000 feet, our temperature is at 0, and after that gets below 0. All right, last one. This one's entitled gasoline usage. And you'll see that the bottom is called miles driven, gallons in the tank. So what did we start with? 15 gallons. And after 200 miles, we still have 7 gallons. So what is our miles per hour? What happened there? So this was 200, right? And this was 8, because from 7 to 15 is 8. So what is our slope? Well, it's rise over run, right? But what is it in context? It's telling us if you took 200, that is the miles. Remember, we usually say miles per hour. So we're just going to take miles, and then we're going to say, miles per gallon. Miles per gallon. So, and 8 gallons. If you divide those, then you'll get how we usually say it, miles per gallon. The slope of this is 8 over 200. But if we take that, 8 goes into 22 times with 4 left over, and it goes into there. 8 goes into 45 times. So we're at 25 miles per gallon. So what does it mean? What does the slope mean? It means how many miles we're getting per gallon, or how many gallons we're getting per mile. And then what does the y-intercept mean? What we started with. What's the x-intercept mean? How the miles we would be at when we didn't have any gas in our tank if we didn't fill up. Okay, so that is just some analyzing graphs whenever you look at a graph. So the big things are look at the tidal, and then look at the x and y axis, and make sure you know what it means in the context of the problem. Good luck. M squared, signing out.